Hey guys, it's SD, your host of the Life Picks Relationship podcast, where people with all sorts of backgrounds, challenges, and life experience show us how they make their relationship extraordinary. Hey guys, we're here today with Yocheved Gershon. How are you?
Hi, Esty. I'm great. Great to connect with you. Nice to see you.
Awesome. You want to tell us about yourself and what you do?
So I'm a hypnotherapist and NLP coach, neurolinguistic programming. I help people overcome anxiety, stress, phobias, they're not sleeping, pain relief. The way I help them is through changing the thought pattern. NLP is all about thoughts affect emotions, which affect behavior. When you want to change a behavior, instead of focusing on the behavior, if you go to the root cause of it, which is the thought process, then it changes how you feel, which changes your behavior. For example, if you're telling yourself, you're having a rough day and you tell yourself, oh, today is awful, it's a really rough day, it's going to make you feel really, really awful and rough. Whereas if you start say, you know what, yes, today's a rough day, right, I'm going to make it a good one. I'm going to do something to help myself. Then you're already changing the way that you're speaking to yourself, and that changes the way that you feel. So it's all about taking a situation and making the best of it and getting the best out of every situation.
So you want to explain to us a bit on a scientific level how that works?
So what it is like, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, so I don't go into the science of the brain, but I can tell you from more an emotional aspect, which is the crucial part of it, because we're emotional beings. We have the logical side of the brain and the emotional side of the brain. Now, when one side is like highly triggered, then the other side is kind of deactivated. For example, when you're in a very heightened emotional state, whether it's you're really, really excited, really happy, or the opposite, like you're really anxious, really nervous, then the logical side is switched off. You can't think rationally. So my approach is about getting that balance, getting your emotions kind of balanced so that you're able to think logically as well. You're using your logical side and your emotional side. For example, also, every experience that happens to you from the moment that you're born creates an emotion. Now, it's not the experience that's important, it's the emotion that it creates. Because if it's an unpleasant emotion, then in the future when something happens, it could be something completely different, but it will trigger that same unpleasant emotion. That's when you start to get anxious, you start to get fears of phobias, panic attacks, and all these unhelpful habits that people come out with. So by clearing the unhelpful emotion, by going back to the original, the very first time that you experienced, let's say, that fear or that sadness, that loneliness, by clearing that, you're helping that person to move forward. It's a bit like when you have a computer, after some time of using it, you get all these files that you don't need anymore. So you just put them all in the recycle bin, empty the recycle bin, and your computer's working well again. The mind is exactly the same way. It keeps every single memory, every experience that happens to you is stored in there. Now, some of them are helpful for us. The ones that are not helpful for us are the ones that I work with in helping you clear that.
How do you go about?
Yeah, so I have different techniques, all based on NLP techniques or hypnotherapy. Obviously, it's like, every professional has their toolbox. And in my toolbox, I have lots of different skills that I've picked up with training and over the years through experience. So when I have, let's say somebody comes to me for the first time, I will just ask them briefly. I focus on the state that they're in and where they want to get to. So instead of focusing all on the past, like a talking therapist, would pick out everything that happened in the past, my focus is on getting them where they want to get to. So let's say at the moment now, let's say they're not sleeping well at night. So I'll just get a brief vision of what it is, how they're feeling, and my focus is on how do you want to feel. So obviously they're going to say that they want to feel relaxed, they want to be able to sleep easy. For the very first session, I kind of do a standard routine, which is, I call it an emotional clearance. Quite similar to guided meditation, a bit deeper than that, where I say, when you get in a car, and you switch the engine on and you just start driving without steering the wheel, you're going to end up crashing. Your mind is exactly the same. You've got to navigate your mind to where you want to get to. So that's where I come in. I help the person to navigate their mind to get them where they want to get to. And I'll use a lot of imagery. The mind is phenomenal. The power of the imagination is like, people underestimate it. So it's working a lot with the unconscious mind, the subconscious mind, because the part of the mind that we use is only about 10%, the conscious mind. That's the part, let's say, that we're using now, we're talking to each other. We're using just the conscious, critical, analytical mind. 90% of the mind is subconscious. That's the part that keeps all the long-term memory. And a lot of people don't use that, which is the big shame. So by using that part of the mind, you're getting powerful results. And again, just going back to how I do that is using various different techniques of helping the person clear any unpleasant emotions, unpleasant experiences, unpleasant thoughts. And once we've cleared that, then I also always focus on building confidence, boosting self-esteem, because the majority of times, I would say almost every time, a person is lacking in self-esteem and confidence. And that is the root of so many issues that I see and I work with. And by building a person's confidence and self-esteem, when a person's feeling good and strong about themselves, it's limitless to what they can achieve.
So how does that affect relationship, being able to have such good confidence and self-esteem?
So firstly, I think to be in a relationship, a person has to be happy with who they are. If you're happy with who you are, you're able to love somebody else. It's like it says you should love someone else like you love yourself. And you know, that is a typical classic example of, you know, how can you love someone else if you don't even love yourself? It all starts with yourself. And for example, when I have people who want to improve their relationships, they want to work on their marriage, my focus is to help each individual on their own to be the best that they can be. When you're healthy in yourself, when you get two people who are feeling good about themselves, they're able to give to the other person, because relationships is all about giving to the other person. When you're in a relationship and you're focusing on yourself, it can just lead to disaster, and it leads to disappointments and unhappiness. When you're in that relationship, you're happy, you're strong in yourself, and you're looking at what can you give to the other person. That's where you get to see the benefits of the relationship.
Yeah. So what would you suggest to someone who doesn't have such a good self-esteem to start doing today while they're at home?
So the first thing would be to boost their self-esteem. Now, the best way to boost your self-esteem, obviously, it depends on each person, because every person has different areas that they need to work on. And it depends also how low their self-esteem is. Unfortunately, some people that I've worked with, their self-esteem is so low that I've got to start right from scratch and teaching them to first like themselves, never mind loving themselves. The one very important point that I often tell people is, and they all love it, is I say, imagine you were a friend of yours and you had to describe yourself to me, right? As your friend, describing her as your friend. How would you describe that person? And then I say, and now you describe yourself, and there's always such a difference. And I say, you know what, if you're describing your friend as your friend, you wouldn't criticize her, but yet to yourself, you're so critical. And I find this again and again and again. People are so critical of themselves. And I always say, if it was a friend, what would you tell them? And they would usually motivate them, they would encourage them. So the first thing I do, I have a worksheet. I call it Maximize Your Potential. There's like 9 different steps there. It's about learning to see the positive in life, learning to see the positive in yourself. One of the points is be kind and compassionate to yourself. Stop criticizing yourself and start to be kind to yourself. I'll teach them to, when they do something well, to mentally and to even tell themselves, you know what, well done. Let's say you did something, you made somebody happy. SD, well done for doing that. You did that well today. Speak to yourself the way that you would speak to someone else. You've got to motivate, you've got to encourage yourself. And this is the way that you build yourself. Another way of doing that is also to focus on the things that you do well. So think of a time where you did something and the results were good, you were happy with it. As soon as you go back to that memory, notice the wonderful feelings that it creates inside you. And when you have those good feelings inside you, you're going to achieve more good things. Yeah, and when it comes to relationships, it's kind of the same thing. The more positive experiences you create with the other person, the better they will feel, and then it bounces back onto you as well. They're going to behave better and nicer to you as well. So it's a win-win situation. But you definitely have to start with yourself, to love yourself and be happy with who you are.
Yeah, because it starts with yourself and then you reinforce it in yourself and also in your partner and relationship. What's your take on communication? You started saying something before on that.
I think communication is key. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. That makes a massive difference. Now, communication also is not just your verbal verbal communication. Communication also includes your non-verbal communication as well, your body language and everything. But once you get communication right, I feel it's a massive, massive part of the relationship. And I do have some worksheets for people to help them with their communication. For example, validating another person. If somebody tells you something, don't just straight away rush in to say what you want to say. First, hear what they've said. Make them feel important enough that, you know what, Esty, I heard what you said. And then validate it, comment on that, and then you can say what you want.
Yeah. So that's first step, but what happens after validation?
So I do have compliments are very important.
Any specific type of compliments or just in general?
So there's an art to complimenting. Compliments and praise, I would put them both together. Say if somebody does something for you, let's say your spouse gave you a drink. If you just say thank you, then you know what, okay, big deal. But if you say, you know what, let's say you were thirsty and they brought you a drink and you just say, oh, you know what, Esty, that is really, really thoughtful of you to give me a drink. I was really thirsty and it makes me feel that you really care. So you're saying what they did and you're expressing how it made you feel. And that is so much more than just saying thank you. And what happens when you compliment and praise in this way, the other person just wants to please you again. And
is that controlling the person?
You tell me. Do you think it is?
It's some sort of manipulation for them to do something for you.
Well, it depends why you're doing it. I always say you've got to be genuine. Whatever you say has to be genuine and real. There's no point in just saying it if it's not real. But when somebody does something for you by expressing how it's making you feel, then you're helping yourself and you're helping them as well. You're making them feel good. Is making someone else feel good controlling and manipulating them?
No, that's not controlling them or manipulating them. But if you're saying it so that they would do it again in the future, that gets a bit more.
Yeah, no, but that's sticky. I'm saying you don't say it because they do it.
Right,
I said
right.
that is a byproduct. When you're saying it because you want to make them feel good.
Yeah.
And you're saying it also because I think showing appreciation is a very, very important quality to have for yourself. You know, when you appreciate things in life, it makes you so much happier, so much better, and you start to realize more and more the good that you have. There's basic values and qualities which I believe are very, very important, and appreciation is one of them. So you're showing appreciation, you're doing it both for yourself to be a better person, and you're doing it, yes, also to make the other person feel good.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to make their relationship better?
It's quite a general question, but my first thing would be to look at the individual, where they are holding, as we've discussed, about their own confidence, their own self-esteem. Now, it depends a lot on the person's experiences until now. If they've been through a challenging youth, a challenging childhood, then they will have a lot of trauma and things that they need to clear. And that 1 or 2 sessions with them will clear that. That's not a problem at all. And then it's working on building themselves, getting themselves to a point where they are happy with who they are, and then they're able to give to the other person.
Like you said, it really starts with yourself and then being able to go with another person.
Another part of that is often that I've seen with people that I'm working with, when you're feeling better in yourself and somebody else tells you something which might not be as nice, you can handle it so much better. Whereas when you're not feeling so good in yourself, you can often take things as criticism which are not meant as criticism.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps in 2 ways.
Yeah. Just like you said before, that everything starts with yourself. And once yourself is healthy, then everything else could grow and become better. Yeah.
A few other points that I've often come across from working with people is that often, a lot of times in relationships, a person can end up feeling quite resentful towards the other person. Now that comes from a few things. One thing is expectations. When you have high expectations, you're most likely going to get disappointed. So you have to learn to lower your expectations. And also when you're doing something for somebody else, let's say you're doing them a favor, you're doing something nice for them, I always say it's important to do it. Yes, of course, you're doing it because you want them to feel good and you genuinely care and you want to help them, but also do it because you want to grow as a person. And when you have this in mind that, you know what, I'm helping this person, I'm stretching my comfort zone because I want to grow as a human being, then there's no disappointment. And I found that is a very, very big point and has helped so many people. Like as soon as I've made them aware about this, they said how it's literally changed their relationship so much.
Yeah, because it moves the focus on what makes you feel good, why you're doing it, and the whole action of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It takes away a lot of that tension and friction that could be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, when you do something and you feel that, you know, oh, wow, I've grown as a person, it makes you feel good again.
Yeah.
Also, obviously, showing genuinely caring, showing an interest in the other person. Also, you know, there's times when you have to know it's about them, and it's times when it's about you. Like I said, do it to make yourself grow as a person, but also happiness comes from giving. And when you give to somebody else, that's what makes you feel good. That's what makes you feel happy.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much. Been awesome having you here.
You're welcome.
Guys, I hope you enjoyed that episode and subscribe to the podcast. Leave a comment below so I can know what you think. And to book your relationship photo shoot, CJA session, or just to hear more about what we do, go to lifepicksrelationships.as.me. I'm waiting.